Oh, we're live.
The record button. Oh yeah. Hey everybody. Hello fellow friends, ladies, and some awesome gents. Equality. uh,
Hydration.
hydration. What you got over there?
Magic.
We just sit on and just laugh the whole time. All right. Well, as people are joining in and watching this possibly later, we hope that you're having just as much fun as we are. We are just off of a magical weekend, making money, managing things, manifesting things, working on our mindset, and doing all that good stuff that sacred CEOs do. So I'm Celia Ward-Wallace. This is Elena Lipson Lindsay Pera. We are the founders of the Sacred CEO Association. We help women make money and make a difference. And so today we're coming to you to talk about money in relationship to relationships. So in particular, money and marriage, since the three of us are married, that is relevant to us. We all have about 20-year relationships. So we got lots to say about money and the dynamics within a relationship. And so if you're married, you'll find this interesting. If you're not married, you'll still find it interesting because we'll just talk within a context of issues that can apply to any type of relationships, you know, your family relationships, your friend relationships, partners, or in the future, if you're looking to have a relationship, maybe some things that you should think about in relationship to money. And so that's what we're talking about today. We feel like it's a hot topic. It's completely relevant and alive in our lives and our homes. And what better thing to do than share with you what's going on with us, because we think that it will serve you as well. So Elena, you want to kick off with this?
Yeah, absolutely.
We're trying to manage our Facebook group.
Yay. Thank you for doing that. I'm a little slow today, you guys, because I am just a little under the weather. So I emerged from my cozy nest to do this because I love it. It's important. I'm all about self-care, you know, but this is something that I'm super passionate about. And I love this topic. And also knowing that I have full permission to go rest if I need to, but I am emerging for this and then I will go back. So I was thinking about my relationship to money and then as it relates to my marriage. And I was remembering this memory sort of popped in of pre-marriage. And I was in a situation where I've been on my own financially since I was 16, paying my own bills, you know, getting loans to go through college. And I sort of hit that momentum of, I can have a credit card at 16. Wow. Like I didn't know what I didn't know at that point, and I was allowed to use my student loans as income, which is really like, oh, if I had a college student right now, I'd be like, let me tell you about what they're going to do. So I just sort of fell into that, which I think was really valuable because I learned so much from going down the rabbit hole of credit and like, why am I paying 23% for this, you know, thing? Like, these rollerblades were 100. Why am I paying over 200 for them now? So I just didn't quite understand, but I really, really got a fast education over the next couple of years of why all of a sudden I had, you know, more than one credit card, lots of debt, paying for all my school stuff, but also living. So I really went to a dark place for myself. So when I met my husband years later, I was in a place where I was working and paying my bills and all of that good stuff. And I had debt. And I had this inner knowing that I didn't want to get into marriage relationship with debt. I always told him that I'm like, I'm paying this off before we get married because it's not yours, it's mine. And if once we get married, it's ours. Like that was just my initial like instinctive knowledge. And he's very fiscally smart and he's all into the market and real estate and he knows how to manage money. His parents had all three of the brothers have these little notebooks where they manage their money. It was really cool. So I came from not so much being educated as a child, just figuring out my way in terms of money, I should say. I had lots of good education, but not for money because we're not taught that in school. And in my household, I didn't really have any sort of education around money. He did, but I knew that I didn't want him to have to take on my debt. So I went on a mission of paying everything off and making sure that I consolidated where I could and just, you know, really was able to pay that off pretty quickly. And then even my student loans, I was able to pay those off pretty soon after we got married. So I had this instinctive, like, I have to be whole and well in my money relationship before I merge my life and everything else with this person. And that really drives a lot of how I handle my money today, because we have the hours, which is our household income. But with me always essentially having my own income, we merged it. But now as a business owner, I have my own structure, my own bank account, my own everything. And actually it took me a while to like not feel guilty about that, because essentially what that does is it gives me the decision-making power to make decisions within my business without making it a household decision. And I had to really lean into that, because on the one hand, his paycheck goes to ours. Why does it mine? So where we landed, and we can talk about, and we will talk about it at some point in the future for all three of us, how exactly we do that. But essentially to let you know that for us, where we landed was I take an income, then contribute to the household in an agreed upon number. So for me, it feels like we do have nice flow coming from my business into the household, but my business decisions, my investment choices, my mindset around where I spend and choose to, how do I choose to use my money, make my money, price my things, that's mine. So it's not like mine, not yours, meaning, you can't ever tell me anything about that. But for me, it really was an empowerment place to where I got to have my own personal relationship around money, so that I can be in a whole relationship with someone else. Now, there's many, many, many ways to be in a relationship with money and then in your partnership. And I'm sure Lindsay and Celia will have lots to add about that. But for me, it was a journey of claiming that I have the authority and I have the wherewithal and ability and skill set to learn what I need to learn about making money and managing money, and then contributing to a household based on what our unit, what our family needs are. And like Celia said earlier, I've been with my husband for almost 18 years now, so it's evolved like crazy. Like, we are going on this whole debt-free thing now, so that affects our spending. But I didn't take the same philosophy in my business. So meaning I still carry debt on purpose, for managing and investing in my business. So that was a whole different conversation. And he knows enough to say, you do what you want to do in your business. This is what we're doing for our household. But that was like a real conversation saying, look, I get it. It's brilliant. We're doing this. And in my business, I'm still choosing to carry debt and use it as a leverage for things I need to invest in at the right time. So that felt really good. And it was super respected. And, I still think about what would it be like to go debt free in my business. And so there's a journey there for sure. But in marriage, I think there's me, him, and us, and all three need to be honored and respected. So I'm really curious to hear both you, Celia and Lindsay, how that played out for you guys over the, 20 years. I'm sure it changes too with kids and businesses and school and all that kind of good stuff.
So good. I just want to invite, I know Shona's watching and Megan was watching, and I'm blanking out on everybody's name because I can't see all the names right now. But those who are watching either live or later, I'd love to know we'd love to know, what is it that you guys want to know about money and marriage, or money and relationships? What are the challenges that maybe you're facing, or the issues that you're dealing with that you're trying to figure out the solutions to? Because between the three of us, we probably haven't been through everything, but we've been through a lot, and have probably learned a lot and seen a lot from all of the different clients that we work with as well. So we'd love to hear more about your specific situation, and if you have any questions or maybe even ideas about things that you've done that have been really helpful in your relationships, we would love to hear from that from you as well. So in terms of me, let's see. Well, I met Joe, my husband, when I was 20. I am turning 40 in June. I know I look like, with my hair like this and my earrings and everything, I look just like I did when I met him. I look like I'm still in college. Power to the people. And so, so when I met Joe, I was 20, and I was raised in a household that had so many different dynamics about money. That's a whole nother conversation to have. But the broadest strokes I can share is We didn't grow up, I didn't grow up with a lot of money at all. I definitely had everything that I needed. I had lots and lots of love. And so I didn't walk around feeling poor or broke or whatever, but we certainly were not even middle class, right? So my parents were working in the factories when I was growing up, on the auto assembly line. I experienced my dad getting laid off, getting injured on the job and having disability and having to be home, and conversations about the impact of, potentially losing my dad's income on the family. And I watched my dad try to transition into consulting, and then he went to go work at a consulting firm, which he hated. And, the people were really, in his mind, very awful. And so he just wasn't made for working in that kind of environment. And so then he went on to start his own nonprofit with the support of my mother behind him. But basically, the first year, just raising enough money for himself and a secretary. And then from there, now 20 plus 30 years later, he has an extremely successful nonprofit. But still, every year he's had to go out himself personally and fundraise to raise the money for that nonprofit. And so it's never been guaranteed. So we don't really have, well, I would like to take that back. I was going to say we don't really have family wealth, but I would say we do have family wealth in regard to, we do have income property on my mother's side of the family. So that certainly is a form of financial privilege. So it wasn't like I grew up fearing for a roof over my head or food in the refrigerator, but there definitely was a lot of financial stress in the household and lots of conversations about money. So for those listening, I'd love to hear, like, what was it like for you when you were growing up? What kind of conversations or lack of conversations were happening in your household around money? And it always, in my upbringing, it went from one spectrum to the other of, oh, we have an influx of money, so let's do something really big and really grand. That always made me feel really anxious. That, why were we doing that? So I couldn't really enjoy it. And then on the flip side, it was, oh, money's really tight, so we need to pull in the reins. We might not have enough. And so it's interesting. It was a lot of uncertainty about money all the time and low level anxiety. And so that translated into me wanting to be a saver and being really nervous about money and just feeling like I didn't even want to spend any money at all. And so my early years in relationship to money leading up to meeting Joe were spent working super hard. I always had multiple jobs, and literally saving every single dime. And having such a fear of, I don't know what it was, but fear of not having the money that I was going to need, that I would debate whether I could buy a dollar bagel, and things like this. I would have a whole rationalization process. And so I'm so excited that we're focusing on empowering women to make money and make a difference, because there's so many layers to this and so many twists and turns and stories we can all tell, and which we're going to have a lot of fun in the years to come, talking about and learning from all of those who are watching and in our communities. But the quick progression here is I met Joe. Joe grew up poor. He grew up really poor, in poverty, single mom. He was the only son. He had always had to be an entrepreneur and make his own money. And he was very comfortable with that. He was very comfortable with risk, and I was extremely risk adverse. And so he and I, for the first 5 or 10 years of our relationship, really butted heads quite a bit, because he kept wanting to spend money to make money or go into debt to, make a profit. And spending money to make money or going into debt was in complete opposition with what I felt comfortable with. And it was a really big problem. For us, we fought quite a bit about money. And just for the sake of time, I could say that the arc of it is we've come a lot further. Part of that was going through the huge, recession that we've all gone through. And us losing a fortune in the real estate market crash and rebuilding from there. And so getting on the back end of things where we supposedly had all this money and everything was going great, but we realized through the crumbling of it all, it really gave us an opportunity to reevaluate what we wanted in our lives and what our values were, and how much gratitude we had for our resilience and all of the blessings that we had that really had nothing to do with money. So it was like a restart button. And for me, it was a much needed restart button, because I went from being so fearful about money to having all of my worst fears about money come true, and then be on the other side of it and go like, hey, you know what? It's okay. I'm okay. Like, I survived. I'm okay. Look over at I still like this guy. You know, I don't like all of his choices, but I still like him, and I don't blame him. It's not his fault we're in this. You know, we went through this together, and we both made good and bad decisions. And so the financial crash actually really helped us in a lot of ways. And then that's where I started to become an entrepreneur, and there's no way I would ever be able to be an entrepreneur or do things that I've done in terms of taking risks, of, in some cases, taking on debt, you know, believing wholeheartedly in myself and just going for things, you know, if I had not been through so many twists and turns and ups and downs in relationship to money, experience both having a lot of money and also losing a lot of money, and realizing that, you know, sometimes it comes as easily as it goes, and, you know, that it doesn't make you, like, it is a thing, but it's not you. So the dissociation with the identity wrapped up in the money was really helpful. And so now I would love to say now, like, oh, we're just la la la, like, we're so good with money. We're on the same page all the time with money. But one thing that did really help us, and this is for those who are entrepreneurs, or, you know, women consultants, or women who have a source of income, not a salaried position. What really changed the game for us was about 2 years ago. Like Elena said, I transitioned from just sending money into my personal account, my household account, whenever I could, to consistently every 2 weeks paying myself a paycheck that went into the household account that my husband could see was coming in. Because then he knew, okay, whatever it was, let's just say hypothetically, it's $1,000 every 2 weeks. So $2,000 a month, right? You know, it's not tons and tons of money, but he knows it's coming. It exists. It's there. He can be happy about that. He can, you know, budget accordingly, because he, at this point in time, is handling the personal finances for the household. But yeah, so that was super helpful. And now when I make these transfers, and it's part of what we're talking about in the Money Magic Now training program, and it's actually also some of what we're going to talk in our upcoming free training that's coming up, about really starting to make conscious decisions about what you're doing with your money, and having systems and tools and structure in place. So now that I have that in place, that's alleviated a lot of the stress. And my husband doesn't really ask me any questions anymore about my finances related to my business, you know, where before, when he would, and I'd be curious for those who are entrepreneurs or consultants, you know, if you can relate to that feeling of when you are making money in your business, but you're just in the first, let's say, 5 years, and sometimes you don't have that much extra money to show for it, that when you start getting asked those questions of like, well, why are you doing that? And, you know, where are you getting the money for that? And how much do you spend on that? You know, you start getting super defensive of like, it's my business. Like, stop asking me questions. I don't need to answer to you. This is my business. It's my business. You know, that whole thing. Where now I feel like I don't have to even say it's my business. Like, it's a given that it's my business. And at the end of the day, the money that I make, that we've agreed upon, that's going to go in to pay my salary, is going in regularly. And as long as that happens, my husband is happy. And then the only time he ever gets a glimpse into the decision making behind the scenes of the finances is when I go to him and ask for his advice, or when I want his opinion on things. I have a lot more now freedom to just be like, I'm over here doing my thing. So gosh, just talking that out, I just want to say, just talking that out, there were like so many gems that I haven't even gotten into share, as I'm sure Elena and Lindsay will feel too. And so I just want to reiterate how excited we are to be doing this super rich work around empowering women, financially, because there's so many layers to it and so many stories and so many experiences and so many cool breakthroughs that you have along the way that we all need to be implementing into our lives. So just honored to be able to talk to all of the women and men that are listening in, and to get to do this work in the world is very, I just feel so grateful for that. So handing it off to you, my sister, Lindsay.
Thank you. Yeah, so many themes resonate. I think money is such a huge topic in relationships, and I don't know the statistics now, but for a long time, and I certainly remember growing up, people used to say that money was one of the number one contributors to divorce and separation, and I'm guessing that's still true. It's certainly one of the areas where we hear about couples having conflict or stress or strife or loneliness or fear. And it brings up all our shit. And from the mystic standpoint, it brings it all up because where our money consciousness happens is right down in those lower chakras that are linked to our survival. So all of our money stories and money histories and relationships may be different, but the response in the body is not necessarily different. So whether you have a whole lot that you're managing or a tiny amount that you're managing, the fear around it is expressed in the body potentially the exact same way. So it certainly is one of the thresholds for learning more about yourself and your partner in a relationship, because it's going to bring up the opportunity to have a lot of conversations and to really look at where you're in sync and where you're not. In terms of Casey and I, we were young as well when we came together, and also young when we got married. We were 23 when we got married. So we started out with nothing, our first jobs out of college and what would it look like, and first apartments and first leases. So we have really always been one of those couples where we were completely in the us and the hour from the first moment. We pooled every cent to see what we had. We were always kind of supporting and, looking on the other side, like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Pulsing each other a lot because we were managing it together and not having a lot to manage. Interestingly, I didn't know Elena's story about going into marriage with debt. So I came out of college with consumer debt, with credit card debt. And I had tremendous shame about that because in my family, I came from a very privileged family, but it was not okay. You didn't carry debt. You always paid your bills every month. You didn't spend more than you had. And even though I've worked from a young age and I worked all the way through college, I couldn't get ahead on this like credit card debt that I had, even though I was a super hard worker. And I'm not even sure at that point if I was 100% transparent with Casey. I think he knew it was there, but it was my private credit card. It was before we were married, so they were separate. And anyway, I look back on it and I laugh now, but at the time it seemed insurmountable. And the amount of money was $1,100. So I kind of laugh at that now, right? Because, as we go through life, the volume and the magnitude of our concerns about money shift and change. But at that time, it might have been $1 million because I felt like it was impossible to overcome that. And yet I was committed to making sure that I didn't go into marriage with it. But over the course of our time together, Casey and I have had periods where we had a lot of money, and we've had periods where we've had really tough times. Some of you may know from my chronic illness story and the situation that hit our household when I found out that I had Lyme disease and that I had passed it to my 3 kids, as we went into a tremendous amount of medical debt, not only because of pursuing support in the Western allopathic world, getting treatment and labs and all of these things, taking Ember to every children's hospital you can imagine in California. But also because I'm a holistic girl at heart, and I was pursuing alternative paths at the same time. There was like no stone unturned. So we've had periods of time where we've had a lot of money and a lot of pooling around us, and times where I almost couldn't even look at it because my focus was elsewhere, and I just couldn't face that in the moment, especially around health challenges. But what remains, despite, and I can't remember which of you said it, you guys, but I really resonate with two things you both said. I think you both said it in your own ways. One, there is no right formula. Every couple is different. Everybody brings their own stories. And so what's important in relationship is to understand your partner's view, to use your peacemaking skills, and to really deeply listen, and to not just hold on to your own story around how it needs to be. Really try to understand where the other person's coming, because that's where the common ground comes from. And the other is that it changes, that the longer you're in this with your partner, there are fluxes. There are times of a lot of fluidity. There are times where even if you have a lot of pooling, you might jointly be deciding together to make a big purchase or a big investment. So there are going to be phases of shift and change. But what doesn't change is the dynamic. That's what I see in my clients and I see in my friends, is if the dynamic is don't look at it, don't talk about it, that will persist wherever you are on the continuum with money. If the dynamic is to have open, clear communication and work through conflict, that will serve you really well regardless of what you face. But if you're stuck not being in sync with your partner, get some help. There are so many resources out there to sit down and help you look at, to come up with a common vocabulary, to work together on a shared vision, to identify solutions like, both Elena and Celia talked about having income into the household from your business to create some freedom in your decision-making in your business. In my case, Casey has always actually been a real sounding board and been involved in my money decisions within the business. But what's interesting is he also has a real understanding and respect for the divine feminine and the intuitive side of me that sometimes can say, I'm wanting to make this decision, but I don't have a business case for why that is. And he's always actually been really in support of that, and it hasn't failed us. So I have a lot of gratitude that we have that kind of sync. There's also a lot of respect that goes the other way. He's like, I'm not seeing this. I'd like to research other options. We'll push pause together. So really, I think it comes down to how can you bring the magic back into the dynamic? How can you open up the heart space and the compassion? Really understand the driving needs, emotional and physical and safety needs behind your relationship to money and your partners, and then weave those together in a way that feels good. I love hearing stories about couples who have come up with really creative solutions. Maybe that's setting one paycheck aside, whether that's setting aside any bonuses or raises, whether that's creating play accounts. Whatever it is, I think if you can focus on planning and pausing when you need to, and then ensuring that you have some money for play, that kind of seems like a sweet little formula for the long haul in marriage and money.
Yeah, so great. Such great information. If you're just joining in now, we invite you to watch it from the beginning. What we've covered so far is really breaking down our 3 individual journeys with money for ourselves, money in relationship to our business, and then also the role that our marriages have played in our money dynamics and in our household, but also in our business. And so much valuable content and storytelling and takeaways have been addressed today. And again, just wanting to, for all of those who are listening in live or listening later, we'd love to hear from you. What in this is resonating with you? What issues are alive for you right now in relationship to your marriage and money, or your partner and money, or your family and money? If only it was so simple that all you had to do is work on yourself and get your own money game together, and everybody else would just adjust, and so it's very real that people are dealing with lots of different kinds of dynamics. We would love to hear from you, either solutions or tools that you've been using that have been really working or that changed the game for you, or if you're really feeling stuck and feeling like this is such a hot button issue for me, I need help, I need support, I don't know what to do, here's my situation. We would love to hear from you as well. As I said from the beginning, we're the founders of the Sacred CEO Association, and really our mission is to help women make money and make a difference with that money. And so really deconstructing your dynamics with money, and in particular to your relationship or your marriage, is a huge important piece in that. A lot of times when we're looking at blocks, great. And Shona's saying she'd love to hear about money and single parenting. So maybe we could talk a little bit about that, guys, before we hop off. But a lot of times these unconscious blocks that we have are coming up in our relationships and, triggering a lot of dynamics that we don't even understand why. So as we're starting to pull the call through, do you guys have any thoughts about, if you are a single parent household, ideas about money in relationship maybe to your children, ways that you can be an example of setting new ideas and frameworks around money with your with your caregivers, with your family, with your community? Any thoughts coming up for you guys on that?
I do. Can I jump in?
Yeah.
I just think it's actually such a blessing and an opportunity to really lead from a place of a strong divine feminine mother when I see my friends who are parenting solo and managing the household finances. And I think one of the keys and beautiful aspects of that is actually true whether you're in a partnership or not, which is transparency with your children about the way that you make decisions and about where things stand, not to bring them into the fear of the moment if you're having a really tough time, but to help them understand how you make decisions, how you plan for the future, how you have allocated resources that month, whether that's, with recreation because there wasn't as much and more focused on, the basics. I think we could do an entire series and call about money and kids. I think it's a really big one. But I'm kind of always on the bandwagon for tracking and all the incredible benefits that it brings, from a standpoint of awareness, from a standpoint of planning, but also from a standpoint of manifestation, which I love to talk about. So if I were to make a single recommendation around money and kids, it would be to use an app like Mint. It's the one that we like to use in our household. And you can get your kids set up with Mint on their own accounts too, even if there's $27 in that account or $127, beginning to have an interface that shows you how much you have, what you use it for, what you want to do with it long term is really powerful and potent, not just for the planning long term, but also for decision making in the moment. You become informed, and of course, awareness and information equal power. And when you're making decisions about your money from a place of power, then you can release that fear, you can release that sense of lack, you can release that, throw caution to the wind, whatever it is, and actually make a decision based on your true desires and intentions. And so I personally love the Mint app. Do either of you use an app or any software that you recommend?
I would love to just pull that thread through. And I love what you said about, first of all, the fact is in the Western world, women are spending most of the money. They might not be earning all of it, but they're spending all of it. So we've got this real opportunity to guide, right? And we're also raising our future leaders. So we've got an opportunity, whether you're in partnership or not. And so the way I look at it is, and I do have several friends who are single and raising kids and working. And so we've had some great discussions about money in general and manifesting and how do you teach it and how do you, so it's really a lot of similar threads that you pull through. You just don't have the other person's stories to sort of interact with in that way, which is an opportunity. I agree with you. It can be a real opportunity to claim leadership. Like, this is how I feel, and I'm going to teach my kid exactly what I want, minus anyone else's story, which can be a great thing. It could definitely be scary until you get empowered and really get clear with your own money patterns and money stories and start to see it as an opportunity. So what we did, and I think this could help a lot of women out there, single moms, is we actually, when we went through, and what really made us feel like adults with money for the first time just recently, is doing the Dave Ramsey debt elimination program. And not that we were in a massive amount of debt at all, but we just sort of saw the credit card bill growing and just didn't feel like we had control with the market and the society and all the stories of fear around money. We're like, okay, we just need to press pause and get very clear. Start having a weekly conversation, just like I do with myself, money date with myself. Get clear, see the numbers. Don't be scared of it. Don't keep, spending and not spending because of your fear or emotional mood. So we decided for our son, we were gonna have, because he is a great manifester. I was telling Lindsay and Celia this last weekend, he just like gets money for Hanukkah and Christmas and Valentine's Day. Who sends money for Valentine's Day? He gets it. So somehow he's accumulating. He doesn't have the blocks that maybe my husband or I had around money. So he has this accumulation thing that happens and he spends it on things that are very thoughtful. But we decided to put him on an envelope system like Dave Ramsey teaches, where here you get it. This percentage of it goes into the spend. This percentage of it goes into the give. And this percentage goes into the, it's like save, spend, give. The really simple. So we can talk more about that in the future and how we did it in our lives and how it created, literally, we would look at each other and we're like, don't you feel like an adult? I do too. And I'm like in my 40s. And finally, for the first time, not only in my own life, but in my partnership and now with my child, I feel like we're giving him a philosophy and awareness so that he doesn't go into his 20s and grab a credit card and do the same thing that I did. So I think whether you're single or in partnership, I think taking claim and ownership of the fact that you can take on this idea, whatever works for you. Like I actually like apps, but I love the feeling of seeing it and writing it down. To me, that feels really like I like to touch it and feel it, but I can see where apps would be awesome. I use apps in my business, but in our family, we do have an envelope system. So it's really fun and silly sometimes, but we just love knowing that we're building like this actual pooling of money around our future needs. So that's what we do. And I think it can be applied to anyone.
Ladies, I love when we follow what wants to grow, as you said. So I would take this as a sign that our next week's final call live stream on this topic should be around money and motherhood.
Yes, so good.
Definitely tune in if you want to hear more about how to build a healthy relationship for your children with money, how to break some of the cycles that are being handed down from generation to generation, some of the ancestral curses, or as some people like to say, and really get our kids conscious and having a positive relationship with money from an early age. So let's plan to talk about all of that next week. As we wrap up this call, we just want to say thank you so much for joining in. We can't wait to hear the insights that have come up for you.